Yeah. Just about time in.
Susie, it can also be used for matching. You could use it for the grants too, so you could like double the money. It could be used for matching grants, like community, whatever that was.
No, I think it's what did we discuss? 1.8 million, I think. Oh, in the budget, yeah.
There's a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah, it could be a lot.
So we still got $1 million. And you can do it without stressing out the budget and without depleting all of this. That's what
There you
we're going to do it for 5 years, so we're not really asking.
All right, it's at 6 o'clock. I'm going to call the Finance Committee meeting to order. The first item on tonight's agenda is the GEO bond in Baker Tilly. So come on up, Andy.
You have a few copies in case people.
All right. I've got one, but these guys might need him down there. Amy, you guys need copies of this? Got enough for all of them there? Perfect, Andy.
No problem.
He's at the hospital with his dad.
Yeah, he said he probably wouldn't make it. So we'll leave a couple of those behind. I got at least one council member couldn't make it, Andy.
Okay.
All right, well, we got some people that haven't heard this. You've explained it to us, Andy, but if you want to just kind of do an overview for the council members that haven't heard this before, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is something we've looked at for the city going back, I would say the last 2 or 3 years. So any time, as far as looking at additional property tax supported debt, there's a couple ways you can issue additional property tax supported debt and not impact taxpayers. And the 2 ways that's typically done are, one, when you have existing debt that's rolling off, you've got debt payments that are going away that would just be replaced essentially with an additional borrowing. The other way it can be done is when you've got tax base growth. So as your tax base gets larger, you can absorb additional debt service, and that will keep your tax rates level. So we've been looking at this for the last couple of years. You may be familiar, you've got your 2016 Ivy Tech bonds outstanding, and those just have about 4 years remaining on those. They'll be fully repaid in 2028. So we've looked at the possibility of essentially wrapping new debt behind the roll-off of your Ivy Tech bonds as those go away. This opportunity came up this year. The county has to certify assessed values by August 1st. And your assessed value for the city went up pretty substantially from 2024 to 2025. You're up about 7% year over year. So your tax base went from about 482 million to about 517 million. And I'll maybe start on that page, page 13 of the analysis. Kind of takes a look at what your tax rates will do with that increase in your tax base. The way property taxes work in Indiana, it's a little bit counterintuitive. So you would think, as your tax base increases by 7%, you would think, that may mean additional 7% in property taxes that the city will receive. The state actually limits what you can raise in property taxes. So although your tax base is going up 7% year over year, what will actually happen is you are still limited to the same percentage of growth in your property taxes that every other community around the state is, and that's capped at 4% next year. So your property tax levy can only increase by 4%, but your tax base is increasing by 7%. And so what that will have the effect of doing is actually pushing your tax rates down just slightly. So we're showing here, you can see in 2024, in your general fund, you levied about $11.4 million You've got about just under $300,000 in debt service, which is your 2016 Ivy Tech bonds. And then your NVH fund, you levied about $1.2 million. So if you don't do anything, we would anticipate your debt service levy would remain about the same year over year. Your general fund can increase only by 4%. Again, even though you're growing by 7%, you're still limited to that 4% cap. And then your NVH fund can only grow by that same 4%. So you can see your general fund increases from about 11.4 million to about 11.8, and then your NVH from about $1,241,000 to $1,291,000. Because your tax base goes up as much as it does year over year, you'll actually see that what the effect of that would be next year would be for your tax rates to come down, and that would be about 8 cents that your tax rate would decrease year over year. What you could do, and what a lot of communities do around the state, is really a form of tax rate management. So as your tax rates come down, you can issue additional property tax supported debt, and then that essentially keeps tax rates level year over year. So that almost 8 cent decrease that you could see from 2024 to 2025, if you wanted to, you have the ability to absorb about another $400,000 of additional debt service, and that would keep your city tax rate right where it is year over year. So we have put together a couple different scenarios, and I know talked with Dave and others last week briefly. I can maybe run through one of the options we would put together. So I'll flip back maybe to page 3. With that $517 million of tax base next year, you have about $1.8 million of available debt limit. That is your statutory constitutional debt limit. So it's based on 2% of 1/3 of your tax base, which is about $3.4 million, and then any property tax or income tax debt that's outstanding counts against that. So your 2022 police station bonds, because those were paid from income tax, those do count against it. So of that 3.4 million, you've got about $1.6 million that currently counts against the debt limit. So we could issue an additional $1.8 million within your debt limit, and that could be done through a traditional general obligation bond. We then ran a couple of scenarios. Scenario 1 is slightly below that number. Scenario 3 is actually a little bit above that and would have to be done through a lease financing. But I'll maybe focus on scenario 2 just to kind of give you an example of what this could look like. So on page 5, you'll see sources and uses of funds for each scenario. Under scenario 2, if you were to borrow an additional $1.8 million, which would be just under that debt limit again, that would provide about $1.6 million in proceeds that could be available for additional projects. General obligation proceeds are very flexible. Those can be used for road projects, really anything that's capital in nature, and those dollars can also be used for community crossing grant matches as well. So very flexible dollars there. If you were to issue up to the $1.8 million, again, we'd estimate between $1.6, $1.7 million that would be available for projects. I'll then maybe flip to page 8, the scenario 2. And so you might recall in that first schedule I showed, we estimate that you could absorb about another $400,000 in additional debt service per year. So we've structured that $1.8 million across a 5-year repayment. So you can see $1.8 million repaid over the 5-year period results in an annual payment of just under $400,000. And then if we flip to page 9, you'll see that $400,000 of additional debt service would essentially layer in on top of your existing 2016 Ivy Tech bonds. And what that would do is your debt service tax rate would increase, but as all your other tax rates, your general fund and your MVH decrease, the net impact is your total city tax rate for taxpayers would remain the same year over year. So again, it's really a trade-off of additional money for projects now with a slight increase of your debt service tax rate, but then overall city tax rate would remain unchanged from year to year. And again, that's just because your tax base is growing at a substantial rate from 2024 to 2025. And then maybe the last thing I would note under this scenario, you'll see it does cause that increase in the debt service tax rate from 2024 to 2025. But then as your 2016 Ivy Tech bonds are paid off in 2028, and as new bonds would be paid off in 2029, that allows that debt service tax rate to come right back down. And so, you could look 27, 28, 29, somewhere in that time frame to come back and issue additional bonds for future projects. So it gives you the flexibility, I think, to, reserve that capacity for needs that the city might have in the future on a capital basis, so.
Can you explain, and I'm probably not gonna say it right, but just essentially how if we don't do this, that like other places are going to, we're just going to get less of a share of everything and the other places are going to get more?
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. So if I'm a taxpayer in the city of Logansport, I pay the city tax rate, but then I also pay the county and the school and the library. And so, what your tax rate does is independent of what all the other units do. So there's nothing that would prevent the county or the school or the library from issuing additional debt much in the same manner that would give them for projects, but then would still impact your taxpayers. This really just kind of takes advantage of your tax-based growth to make sure that you can continue to invest in capital needs.
But if we don't invest in it, that capital or that excess ends up going in a different direction, correct? We don't actually, the taxpayer doesn't actually get a break on the situation. Is that a fair way to say that?
Correct, because with where most of your tax rates are, most of your taxpayers are already at the property tax caps. And so, that slight reduction in tax rate really isn't going to, affect the average bill for your average taxpayer.
Scott, Cam, Chris, I know this is all new to you guys, so do you have any questions for Andy at this point, or understand exactly what we're looking at here? This is something, and actually Bill introduced it to me, and I don't want to put him on the spot, but this is something the school's done for quite some time and gives them the ability to do a lot of the capital projects that they wouldn't be able to do otherwise.
That's exactly right. I didn't dig into your department's budgets, but I would assume there's some capital things in the budget that aren't operational. What this would do is allow them to not include that in their budget. It could be used for other things that aren't buying a truck or something to a park. You could focus your debt structure towards these capital improvement plans. So with that, the net proceeds is 1.6 million. It could be used for anything that's not personnel. Streets, sidewalks, parks, golf course, whatever it may be, you can use it for those things. The good thing with Ivy Tech rolling off in 2029, the guesstimate would be if assessments don't go up again, if they stay stagnant, you'd be able to borrow something in the $3.6, $3.7 million at that range for more capital improvements. And you can start to build a 5-year plan. In 5 years, we're going to do this, this, and this with $3.6 million. And it's an ongoing thing. You can bet that every other taxing unit in the city or the county is doing this. You recall earlier this year, you approved a GO bond for the airport. They did about $1 million for a hangar, same concept that you're looking at. At the school, we do it every 3 years. It's more common known as a GO bond, general obligation bond, and we use it for improvements. Next Monday, we're closing on a $4 million GO bond to completely redo the inside of the middle school. The way the mechanisms are at the state level now with circuit breakers and budgets tight, this is the mechanism that people use or governments use to fund capital projects throughout the state. And you can even use it for matching. You can say we're going to take $1 million towards community crossings, and you can match it, potentially double that amount for street projects. So absolutely, the other government entities are doing it. The county does it, schools do it, the airport does it, the library does it. You're not increasing the tax rate, and you're not really lessening the tax burden by not doing it. So I think it's a missed opportunity if you do not do it.
One of the things about the bond is you have 3 years. It's not like if we get this bond by the end of the year, we got to spend it right away. We can actually think about how we want to utilize it. And I'll give one of these to Haley, and she can pass them on. These are just examples of things that are in our budget right now for 2025 that we could possibly take some of those out and substitute in bonded money in their place and free up some money in the general fund and a couple of our other funds. They're just capital things that we've got in there already that could possibly be considered.
And that's a great point, Dave, because you do have the 3 years to spend it, and a lot of communities will kind of set that money aside, and it'll be their community crossings, matching money for the next 2 or 3 applications that they put in. So it's a very flexible tool.
To my knowledge, the two things you cannot do is you cannot use it for personnel, and you can't do arbitrage, right? You can't sit on the money, which is tax-free, you're borrowing tax-free at 2.9, 2.3%, whatever it ends up being. You can't turn around and invest all that money at 5% and make money on a borrowing. So they call it arbitrage. So that's why they give you a time frame to spend the money.
You can't
And
invest
it
it.
can draw interest, just not
can draw
more,
interest.
just not more than you're paying.
You cannot exceed your output, yeah.
And if you do earn more, it's just money that has to be rebated back to the IRS. So.
Anyone have any questions at this time, or?
What's the benefit of keeping the city debt so high, though?
I mean, the advantage is, without impacting taxpayers, it's the ability to fund additional projects. If you don't do anything here, I guess the advantage of not doing anything is that you would see that tax rate come down ever so slightly. Most of your taxpayers are already at the property tax cap, so if I'm a homeowner and I own a $150,000 home, I can't pay more than $1,500 a year. And my tax bill may be $2,000, but I'm capped at that $1,500. If that tax rate comes down, pennies, that's not going to get me back below the $1,500 that I'm currently paying. What that could provide to the city is some circuit breaker relief. So as those tax rates come down, people are losing less to the cap. It would mean less of a hit to your general fund through circuit breaker. But that's probably, pennies on the dollar compared to what the benefit is to the city by issuing the additional debt for projects.
If we let this go long enough, do we lose the ability down the road to borrow without impacting our tax rate? I mean,
You don't to the extent that no other units take advantage of it. So, to the earlier point, if the county or, another unit were to issue against your growth, then your growth is essentially eaten up by their debt repayment.
and we lose out then as time goes on.
Correct.
And
Yeah,
we have-
unfortunately, with circuit breaker now, it does kind of cause, the different taxing units to compete for the same thing, the same piece of the pie. So, this is city growth, and this would be a city bond to provide projects, within the city limits. Unfortunately, that, again, 7% tax base growth, you would hope that would equal 7% additional property tax revenue, but because you're capped by that maximum levy at 4%, it doesn't matter if you grow at 2% or 7% or 20%, you're still capped at that 4%.
Is there any way to kind of project how much it would affect the circuit breaker? Like, I know the projections for us for next year are just under $4 million.
Can you kind of explain, like, the term circuit breaker and what that means? I mean, I know the very first meeting that we had, I was kind of confused by that, so that might be helpful.
Yeah, so circuit breaker is, again, the property tax caps that were put in place in the state constitution, I think, way back in 2010. So if I'm a homestead taxpayer, I can't pay more than 1% of what my property's worth in taxes. For apartment property, farmland, long-term care facilities, things like nursing homes, they can't pay more than 2%. And then if I'm a commercial property, I can't pay more than 3%. So basically, each year when people are billed for their property taxes, you look at what their property's worth, and what the tax rate is, and then you look at what the property's worth and what those caps are. So if your tax rate's $5 and I'm a commercial taxpayer and I can't pay more than 3%, then instead of paying that $5, I only pay the 3%. So it's a credit for taxpayers, which is a good thing, but for local government, it's money that you levy and then you don't receive. So you lose, I think, currently about 30% to circuit breaker each year, which is your share of everybody's tax bill that they're not paying. Those tax rates come back down, you would see some benefit. We could model it out in more detail. I know here we're showing you would absorb about $400,000 in debt service. I think if it was, circuit breaker relief, it's maybe somewhere in like the $100,000 to $150,000 range per year
So,
maximum.
what we would gain from the circuit breaker going down would basically offset any interest that we pay along the way for the bond. Does that make sense, what I'm saying? Roundabout, they'd kind of offset each other. The
Yeah.
interest that we'd pay would be offset by the increase in the amount that we got due to the decrease in the circuit breaker, basically.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So again, here, we wouldn't anticipate any increases in what you're losing to circuit breaker. You're simply keeping that tax rate where it is, so people are not going to pay more over the cap than they currently are.
And it might help, I don't know, I think everyone here owns their home, and if you're having trouble understanding it, you get a printout every year from the county, and it lays it all out, line by line, and it'll show you whether or not you're paying the full amount, or whether you're getting a break. And if you're getting a break, that break in there is part of what we call the circuit breaker. If you're paying $200 less than what it would have been without the cap, that's the circuit breaker, that amount that you don't have to pay.
And the easy way to kind of check that is, again, if your home's worth $150,000, if your tax bill's around $1,500, that means you're probably capped on
Probably right on it. Do we want to move this forward to the October 14th meeting? And for you guys that aren't sure, or maybe have more questions, Andy's always available to email or to contact with any questions you might have. And I'm sure he'd be willing to come back.
So are we looking at the 5-year then?
Yes.
Is that
That was the one that we were looking at.
Scenario 2.
Yes.
So are we only looking at paying an additional $128,000
Yes.
Right.
for 5 years?
Yeah, over 5 years, yeah.
And the thought of the 5 years was not to over-obligate if there's a new council. So you've got 3.5 years left, and a little over 3 years left, kind of get their feet wet a year into it, but not, oh, by the way, you got 7 more years of debt. So they can make their own decisions.
It's page 8, right?
Yes.
Correct.
Page 8. Okay with moving this forward, Haley?
Yes.
Scott? Cam? Susie?
Yes.
Chris? All right, we'll move this forward to the October 14th meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you want to give us a brief, and I know Jan and Dean are here, maybe on the response to the RFP for the clubhouse?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. So no, I've been,
Move the net microphone closer to you.
oh, sure. Can you hear me okay? So we did receive proposals back, I know I've been at a couple previous council meetings on the Dykeman Clubhouse proposals. We did receive proposals back from banks last Wednesday, the 25th. We had a number of banks looking at it. I was hopeful we would receive more bids, but I think the bid that we did get was very competitive. So we did receive a single proposal from Security Federal, but it did provide us with 3 different options. And the 3 different options they provided were a 4.5% fixed rate, but it did not give us the ability to pay off the loan prior to maturity. The second scenario they provided was a 4.75% interest rate, and then that gives us the ability to pay off additional principal beginning 12 months in. And then the final option they had provided was a flat 5% interest rate, and then the ability to pay bonds off beginning 6 months in. We basically updated the analysis we had shared with the council previously, and it appears that the optimal structure, I guess, is the 4.75% interest rate with the ability to start paying bonds down beginning 12 months in. So the final financing structure will end up being just under a $2.2 million bond. And then that will provide $2.5 million for construction of the clubhouse, and then $100,000 of additional proceeds for furnishings, and then we'll pay the various financing costs related. That'll be about $2.2 million at 4.5%, again repaid over about a 5-year period. So that's an annual payment of just under $500,000 per year through 2030. But then based on the timing of when we anticipate that pledges will come in the future, you should have the ability to pay it off about a year early. So rather than paying it off in 2030, we would anticipate it would be fully paid off in 2029. And then that would keep about $70,000 in additional cushion on the pledges, which is money that could either be put back into the project at the end, or again, just provides additional cushion in case there's any issues in the pledges that would come in, or the timing of when those pledges would come in. So I think still a very good proposal. Again, we were hoping, maybe to come in a little bit below the 4.5%. We did, the fees that were proposed by the bank were, I think, $15,000, $20,000 less than what we had anticipated. So between, a slightly higher interest rate, but then a reduction in those fees, it actually comes out slightly ahead of kind of what our estimates that we had shared with you previously were. So be happy to, I guess, answer any questions on that.
Andy, do you have any?
So you're thinking scenario 2B is what we're looking at?
Correct. So it'll, we'll basically structure it at scenario 2, and then scenario 2B, assuming pledges come in based on the timing, that's what we would anticipate that the repayment would look like. So you pay kind of the scheduled repayment that we show in 2A, and then you'd make additional principal as those pledges are available. So that pays it off about a year early, and then saves, let's see, $241,000 versus $324, so it saves about $100,000 of interest by paying it off at an accelerated rate. Absolutely.
Jan, you have that, can you send that to council? I don't believe any council has
I was
the,
gonna say, none of us are
The
looking at
RF.
what you're talking about.
I'm sorry, I'm happy to,
oh, you got
if you have
some,
time, I can
Andy?
pass around some numbers.
Thank you, Andy.
Andy, I don't understand what the optional redemption means. What does that mean what does that mean? I don't understand what that is.
So the banks.
First, right up front that we do that, or at the end?
No, so beginning 12 months in, so we anticipate closing in October of this year. So beginning October of 2025, you'll have the ability to make your scheduled payments on it, but then you can also pay additional payments. So it's kind of like a home mortgage. You have the ability to, or you have your scheduled payments you pay monthly, but then you can pay additional principal at any time. You'll have that same flexibility with.
After 12 months.
After 12 months, exactly. You're paying a little bit higher rate to get that ability, but then that'll more than pay for itself by allowing you to pay that principal down about a year early.
You say that's 2B.
I'm sorry, Andy.
Correct.
I'm just looking at this real quick, so can you please tell me what scenario you're looking at going with?
Yeah, so if you look at the second page, the sources and uses, I'll maybe start there. So that's kind of what the cost and funding will look like. So we've got about just under a $2.2 million borrowing. The foundation will have about $575,000 in pledges that can be applied, and then that'll fund the $2.5 million for the project and $100,000 for the furnishings. And then the repayment is shown, if you look at page 5, maybe start there. So page 5, that's essentially the scheduled repayment that we will agree to with the bank. So you'll make payments of just under $500,000 a year through January of 2030. But then what we show on scenario 2B on page 7 is assuming pledges come in as they're anticipated, you'll actually pay down additional principal at a much faster rate. So rather, if you kind of flip between pages 5 and 7, you'll see on page 5, full repayment doesn't occur until January of 2030. And then on page 7, you'll see full repayment in January of 2029. So it's just paying that principal down much quicker.
So that's your game plan.
Correct.
Okay.
And the city will have the ability to start paying down additional principal, as you'll see in scenario 2B, assuming the pledges come in kind of as they are currently anticipated.
Okay.
And then maybe the last page I'll just mention, page 8, so right behind the scenario 2B amortization. This is what we anticipate that the cash flows would look like over the next couple of years. So you'll see kind of beginning cash on hand for the foundation, those pledges that we anticipate coming in every 6 months, and then debt service that would be paid down on the obligation. So you'll see in January 2029, the entire obligation would be paid off, and there would still be about $71,000 remaining at that point. So if there's any issues with pledges or timing of pledges, that does give you about $70,000 of cushion on those.
Does it also give you the ability to pay something if like it didn't quite go as planned and you know how they say, oh, we needed to do this, so it's gonna be a little bit more of an expense? And that $71,000 also be spent on that?
It could, yeah. It could be additional money for just kind of cushion on the repayment, or assuming everything comes in as planned, then that's additional money for the project too. And that could kind of be flexible. It doesn't have to necessarily be at the very end. You know, if you're 2 years in and pledges are right where they're at or ahead of schedule, then, you know, you could certainly use some of that money at that point as well.
Because the end balance for every year is the bottom line, and you're carried on to the next year, I got it.
Correct. And we're basically just showing, you know, kind of the quickest that you could pay the obligation down just to minimize that interest cost. And then I think the plan would be to get closed on this by October 10th, so you'd have proceeds ready for construction by October 10th.
I have one more question then. So if we have, let's say our balance at the foundation is more than what our debt payment is supposed to be on July 25th, let's say, are you expecting the foundation to put that money in the fund every time we get the donation? Or are we going to be able to collect any interest that we're able to gain on having that in our fund at the foundation and then pay that money to the overall, you know, all at one time? So we owe $247,013 on July 25th. We hold everything in our fund but that amount, so that amount can be paid.
So the
Because
way,
if you gain, if the city gains interest off of that, there's nothing that says that that's going to be able to be used for the clubhouse.
Well, we've had to set up a separate account.
Right.
And I don't know, I guess when Lisa Lee explained it, she wasn't specific as to whether you had to send all the money you had or what, but there's timeframes every 6 months when you're supposed to send the money to us. But I don't know the answer to that question either, Jan, but I know that Kyle had talked to me and you know, I had intended to get with Tyler here and try to set up a fund where we could keep that interest separate from the other interest. But now,
I'm okay,
if it's all right,
I just would like to see that money used to, you know, to gain interest that helps pay for this clubhouse project if we can. And if we can do it at the foundation more efficiently than what the city can do, that'd be fine. But I don't know, you know.
Yeah, you know, if you've already got it set up, I know you did have an agreement with Logan Savings Bank on that. And if it's already,
Commercial rates right now, so
Pardon?
they give us commercial rates right now,
Yeah.
so.
you know, and if they're willing to do that for the term of the agreement, I don't know why we'd have to have that money, except what, you know, that you know, you're gonna play this game where are you drawing more interest, or is it to your benefit to shove it all to us to start making bigger payments down the road? Those are,
Well, and I know we could do that as well, but, you know, until we actually have enough to make an additional amount to to lower the debt more quickly, it sometimes it takes, might, like, we might have an extra $50,000 in there.
well, let me ask Andy this, that in this case that you've worked this out to where every 6 months, where your graph here shows whatever they've collected during that 6-month period from their charts, correct?
Correct.
So a lot of months, Jan, I mean, you're just barely going to have enough money to send it to us in time to make the payments. I mean, the balances, a lot of times are going to be minimal once you make that payment to us, but, other than right here, maybe at the start, it would be advantageous for you to hang on to it for a little while, but
Dave, that's not the city's money anyway, that's the foundation's money.
But what she's saying is, it gives them the ability, let's say somebody doesn't pay, she's interested in that,
A little bit
in
of
that
cushion. No,
interest, making up the difference she might need down the road.
right, but I'm just saying, this money belonged to the foundation. This money only comes to the city to make the payment.
Right.
So we really shouldn't be making interest on money that they can be making interest on.
No, and that's what I said, if we set it up, it would stay in the fund that would only be used to pay their payments.
Okay.
Yeah. But, I don't know the correct answer to that question, Jan. I don't know if there's any legal implications in all that.
I think whether it remains with the foundation or whether it did come to the city, I mean, it would have to stay within the project, so it couldn't get,
Right.
pulled out and used for something
Right.
else. So there's some protection there. And, I would say, really, and I think, Dave, you kind of alluded to that, really your ability to earn interest is really that first probably 12 to 18 months, before we have the ability to start paying it down. So in that case, I mean, you could definitely earn some significant earnings, kind of through July, December of 2025. And that's all additional money for the project too.
It's the first 2 payments, so it's already gone down a bunch.
Right.
Any other questions on the clubhouse? All right, thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time, Andy.
Thank you.
To answer questions if any come up, so thank you. Hesitate to reach out.
Next, we have, do I say this, is it Alicia?
Alicia, that was good, that was good.
All right. Sturgis, she's with Guardians Advocates.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Everyone here is new faces.
We have all that.
Oh, you do, okay.
Yeah, we do. We
All
have
right, okay, fantastic. You want it?
Oh, I'm sorry, he didn't print it.
Okay,
Maya,
okay.
did you print it?
I did send him over today, I didn't know if he had gotten them passed out or not.
I'll take one. I mean, I just didn't print it.
Can you get it? Oh, straight. Oh!
T-bag toast.
I know, right? Thank you. Oh, thank you. Okay. Yes, Alicia Sturgis, I'm the executive director for Guardian Advocates. So we have been serving as an adult guardianship program here in Cass County since, yep. Make sure I got one for myself. Yep, I do, I'm good, okay. We've been serving since 2019, Cass County. So, from my experience of going to city councils and commissioners meetings, our hardest thing with our organization is to give numbers for the people that we serve. As an adult guardianship organization, we get referrals from concerned community members about individuals living in deplorable situations. We get referrals from hospitals, law enforcement, mayors, if you will, about individuals that the community members recognize are in need of somebody and helping in making those individuals' decisions. The Supreme Court started this program back in 2014, and the VASIA, which is Volunteers for Advocates and Seniors and Incapacitated Adults, is the General Supreme Court Guardianship Program. It now serves 52 of the 92 counties in the state of Indiana. Guardian Advocates, as an organization, we were 2 years ago with Area 5 as an umbrella, so we were Area 5 Adult Guardianship. And then we merged with our sister program, Guardian Advocates Incorporated. They are the East Division, we are the West Division. Here in the West Division, we serve 5 counties: Cass, Miami, Tipton, Howard, and Fulton. And we have seen a huge need, huge increase, and great success with our organization. A lot of these individuals that we get, 95% of these individuals that we serve under a guardianship are without family. Our general expectations or a need for guardianship would be over the age of 18 with a physician's report showing an incapacitation and the need for somebody to advocate for these individuals. So either there's not family involved or family who doesn't have capacity themselves to be able to make decisions for these individuals. So this presentation that I provided you tonight just gives a brief example of what our organization is, some definitions of what exactly a guardian is, what the meaning of an incapacitated individual is, and what are the least restrictive alternatives. So guardianship is a very restrictive alternative to advocating for an individual's life. You have a power of attorney or healthcare representative. We've got supported decision-making that the state of Indiana is really grabbing onto, the supported decision-making as a least restrictive alternative to guardianship, because when we become guardian for an individual, you're essentially taking that adult decision-maker's rights away. But as the probate code states in the state of Indiana, even though we are most restrictive, our goal is to increase the quality of these individuals' lives, get them the help and the care that they need with their thoughts and feelings and emotions, background, religious beliefs, all that into consideration. We want this to be for their sake, not for our sake. And we've seen great success with this organization in helping community members. Just one prime example, I believe it was about this time last year or around Christmas, Mayor did present to us with an individual who was homeless on the streets of Logansport, sleeping on benches left and right. We collaborated with Fort County where we were able to get him started on the Social Security process and the Medicaid process. Unfortunately, we could not get a physician's report to show an incapacitation, even though he had numerous emergency room visits due to the sores and wounds and care that he needed for his legs and being out in the open environment all the time. But I am proud to say that we do have a report out on him. Even though we weren't able to get guardianship, we were, as a least restrictive alternative, able to help him in getting those resources along with Fort County. And he now resides at a Purion up at the base for long-term care. And he's doing very well. So that is our goal. Even if we're not obtaining guardianship for these individuals, if we can be a community resource for anybody. I mean, we've had some pretty crazy calls and pretty crazy situations. Then, I mean, we're there. We're there doing the face-to-face. You know, we've done a lot. We've played a lot of roles that Adult Protective Services has played, or they've even called us out to homes where individuals are living in deplorable situations, and we're able to say to the individuals, this isn't quality of life. You know, it's a lot as I get older and get more into the field of care for individuals, you realize that your tone of voice and the way that you talk to people really brings either a negative or a positive response. So I'm really happy. It is my heart that I'm able to be in these situations with these individuals and ultimately convince them to get the care that they need so that we can move forward with guardianship. What a guardianship looks like is when we get that referral and we get that physician's report. We do use pro bono attorneys in all 5 of the counties that we serve, and they've been outstanding here. We have one in particular, he jumps on it every time, no questions asked, and really helps us. And Judge Kitts is very familiar with our organization as well. So the attorney will draw up the petition for guardianship. If there's any family members or anything like that, we get all the legalities out of the way and stuff. We cross our T's and dot our I's, make sure we're not stepping on anybody's toes. And then the judge typically by a hearing will grant us guardianship. And that's kind of in conjunction, depends on the person's situation, if they're living in deplorable conditions, or even if it's just a long-term care facility, needing somebody to advocate for that individual. And we're more than willing. I mean, I have a history of working in long-term care facilities, and they're not the best of situations. So to be a guardian in those facilities, to be able to have eyes and ears on those individuals, to make sure that they're getting the care and they're not sitting in bed wet, soaked all day long, they're not being neglected or abused, to be able to be that guardian, to be able to advocate for that individual. I wish we could do it for all of them, trust me. Unfortunately, we can't. So how our organization is funded is through city councils, commissioners, community support. When the Supreme Court had brought this program, they had created it with the fact that there would be a 2-for-1 matching grant, up to $75,000. So every year around this time, which mine is due October 18th, I file a grant with the Supreme Court for matching funds that I get in the community. So for instance, if I get $7,500 from the city council, the Supreme Court will match me $15,000 in conjunction to that. So, but it's only up to $75,000. And I'm proud to say that we exceed their matching grants. I mean, so essentially I have to have $37,500 in order to get this $75,000 matched. For the last 3 years, we have not gotten $75,000. We've gotten $50,000, $55,000 in the last 3 years from the Supreme Court. And they told us from the get-go, you need to make sure that you're getting your community support. They're upholding your organization. It is the people in the community that you are serving. So working with other entities and stuff, and we have some other ideas on how to get more funding as well. But when my now retired director, Linda Johnson, had started this program in 2017 under Area 5, that was her go-to, was the city councils and the commissioners and the United Ways and the foundations and stuff, and it has been fantastic, phenomenal support. So here I am again in 2024 requesting funding. I know it seems like a lot of city councils and commissioners maybe just look at us as another entity wanting money, but that is not. I mean, I don't do this for the money. I do this out of the kindness of my heart. I mean, we have 3 staff. We have 2.5 staff. It's me and my case manager. We currently, in all 5 counties, we serve 36 guardianships. And we just recently hired a part-time volunteer outreach coordinator because this program was set up to be a volunteer-based program. We are to hire and train volunteers to go out in the community once we've established guardianship and meet with these individuals, make sure that their needs are still being met, and then report back to staff. So least amount of staff possible, as many volunteers as possible. And we are very weak in that not having the volunteer support. So we have hired an outreach coordinator. We're hoping to see more success in that aspect. That'll kind of keep the cost where it's at now. Along with the example of the gentleman that I just spoke about living on the streets, we have seen numerous cases, particularly around Cass County, where individuals are living in deplorable situations, no fault of their own. Maybe it was their fault, mental health, substance abuse, whatever. I mean, we are all across the board. You name it, we've seen it. And bed bugs, cockroaches, feces. Again, we've taken on APS cases and been able to get those individuals the care that they needed. So, as you read through this, I would just like to go over particularly what I've came here for tonight. Back on the second to last page is our incumbency letter. It shows you the numbers of the impact. It says community impact in 8 years, but again, we've been here since 2019, so we're rolling into year 5. And then, you know, COVID is, of course. So in Cass County, we currently are serving 6 guardianships. We've had a total of 13 with 7 deaths. And we have 2 pending cases. So, like I said, we're not just guardianship, we are help all. So, out of this, we have helped and completed 36 cases, whether we've found somebody else to be guardian or the individual just through minimal resources gained capacity, was able to just setting them up with other resources in the community. And then a total referred is 51. So out of all 5 counties that we serve, Cass County is second on our list at about 24% out of the 210 that we've served over the last 7 years, 8 years. And then, of course, 92% is the mental health. So a lot of pushback that I've been getting is, oh, you're appointed over 6 people. That doesn't say a lot. We've been funding you since 2019 and you're only serving 6 people. So these individuals, I don't know how else to get people to understand that these individuals, we are taking them on as family. I become mom, I become sister, I become aunt, I become granddaughter, I become niece, whatever you want to call me, but that's what I am. I am family to these individuals. My case manager is family to these individuals. We are in their life daily. And along with the mental health, you have behaviors. Along with the substance abuse, you have recovery. Along with intellectual disabilities, you have long-term management. So we're constantly modifying plans and working with other entities to find out how we can continue to help these 6 specifically in Cass County that we continue to help. And the reason why I can't put a number on it is because if Brittany takes 40 hours out of my month, because every other day she's having a behavior, so every other day I'm spending 2 or 3 hours trying to help that behavior and figure out with the provider what can we do to help her, versus somebody that I only see 2 times a month. You know, you can't put a financial money amount on each individual because collectively they're served differently. So I've come to you today and requesting for your donation for 2025 in the amount of $7,500. So we've gone up from 2019, where we started at $2,000. Last year we had asked for $5,000, and then this year we are asking for $7,500. Dave, do you happen to know if we were awarded $5,000 or $7,500 last year from the city council?
$5,000.
Okay, that's what I thought.
That's what you asked for last year, I believe.
Yep, and when Linda did come to present, she did imply that we would be asking for an increase, and we've asked for an increase all across the board. We're still in need of another case manager. So our budget this year is approximately $217,000. But to be very transparent, I know we only bring in about $130,000 a year. And that's from the get-go. From 2019, it's been about $130,000 budget. And our budget, if there is a client in need, we're more than willing to buy them whatever they need. We have the funds for it. That's not the problem. The problem is just continuing to and growth and moving forward. And, we can get here, we can get the $130,000 every single year, but we'll stay right here with the 2.5 employees, and we'll stay right here with the 36 guardianships. Because without that extra case manager, we can't afford it, and we can't. So that's our dilemma right now, along with the volunteers, is getting those volunteers. I think that will help too in moving. But even though our budget is set at 217, with what we ask, and if I can throw out another number here for you, so approximately, if you take that 24% of our 217,000, that's approximately 52,000 for Cass County as a budget we would collectively need. We do get support from EEL for $7,500. They're fantastic. We've put in a United Way grant for $7,500 this year. We have not been able to attend a commissioners meeting, and we are happy to be here and requesting $7,500 today. So approximately, I'm terrible at math. 22 out of the 52,000. Again, we never meet that expectation, but I'm just happy to be able to be here and present to you guys, all of you new lovely individuals. Are there any questions? I know I ran through that really fast, so.
Yeah, I have some questions.
Yeah.
I don't know how much money the county has given you since 2019 towards this program. If this is you serving the entire county, and the city of Logansport has given you money every single year since 2019, what has the county given you?
Well, that's nothing the last 2 years. And we tried to get to them this year, and they had implied that they do not have it in their budget, and they had to make some budget adjustments and would not allow us to come and present this year, unfortunately. So years prior, so for 2025 and 2024, we've gotten nothing. I believe we did get awarded $5,000 in 2023. So, and then 2,000 before that.
So you yourself are not a volunteer,
Oh, yes.
so you don't make any money doing this job?
Oh, yes. I'm the executive director for the organization of the West. I manage these 5 counties. I manage my case manager. The volunteers that we do have, we currently have 9 active volunteers, and then we have 3 volunteers that have agreed to be part of our board. So I do, yes, and that is majority of the budget is personnel, payroll.
So what's your annual salary?
My annual salary is about $43,000 a year. So approximately $22 an hour.
So you've got 6 cases currently in Cass County. Can you tell us a little bit about them? Are they
Yeah.
like?
She only has 2 pending cases.
Well, I have 6 active guardianship cases. We've had them, all 6 of them, for about 4 years, approximately. The 7 that are deceased, a few of those cases have been a year or 2, but we've taken emergency cases to make life-altering decisions. I used to work as a case manager at 4 counties, so one of the individuals in particular had no family, was living in the hospital on life support. I could tell you some gruesome stuff about his situation. He lived on life support for about 2 weeks, and no human body is meant to live on life support while they're bleeding out on. So they needed a decision maker, and they called us to be guardian for that decision, and we collectively, as a board, as an organization, made that decision. And then we make all arrangements thereafter as well. So the funeral arrangements, working with those individuals. And so back to the 6 that we currently serve, yes. Again, putting money on the numbers for the individuals. We have one client that we got from Fort County, and she's Spitfire. She is, I mean, it's every other day I'm getting a phone call from a group home provider, just trying to figure out how we can help with her mental health. And she's also intellectually disabled. And her mother here in town has intellectual disabilities as well, so wasn't able to deal with her mental health and her intellectual disabilities. She's very aggressive towards others. So we are constantly trying to modify plans to make sure that her mental health needs are being met, and that's not met by over medicating. You know, we've done gene site testing on her to see what medications are going to work for her and stuff. And these individuals that we serve are very responsive to us. I mean, these providers call us 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning because we're on call 24/7 and say, hey, she's in her room screaming at the top of her lungs. I'll get on the phone with her and I'll say, hey, what's going on? You know, can we calm down? Sometimes I've had to go and physically be there to address the issue. Picking individuals up from the hospital when they call the ambulance on themselves, just because that's part of their hypochondria, is to go to the hospital because they think something's wrong, and then the hospital calls us and says, hey, they have no ride home. So we're like, okay, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, I'll be there, give me 30 minutes, you know. We have, a 90-year-old lady. Her and her son lived in Cass Plaza, and this is the APS situation they had called us about. And son was sitting in a recliner with an open wound on his bottom and had maggots crawling out of the wounds. And the mother was demented with bed bug feces all over her gown. You can see the little speckles all over her. Couldn't even name her children, bless her heart. But we were able to get both of them convinced to go to the hospital. So they went to Logan Memorial, and we were in that time able to get an emergency guardianship for the mother. The son went to the VA to get services. The physician would not give us a report for him. And the son inevitably ended up back here with his sister, but we were able to get her to a long-term care facility, get her healthy, get her clean. That was 4 years ago, and now, I mean, she just turned 90 years old, I want to say the 15th of September, and, I mean, she's still got dementia, but she loves holding her little teddy bears, and she's just the sweetest. She acts like she knows me, and I know she doesn't know me. When she sees me, oh, your hair's getting so long, you're so pretty. I think I resemble one of her daughters, so that kind of gives her a little bit of that familiarity. And then, unfortunately, it is sad to report that the son, when he moved back in with his sister, he ended up passing away shortly thereafter. So I think a heart attack or something like that. So those are some of the cases. We don't always win them all either. I've had cases where I've talked an individual into getting help. It was the prime of COVID. We got her to the hospital. She was an alcoholic, and she couldn't walk. She detoxed for 3 days in the hospital while they tried to find her placement. No facility would take her because everybody's bed was full from COVID. And then no mental health facility would take her because she couldn't walk. So inevitably, they ended up discharging her back home via ambulance on a gurney, taking her up a flight of stairs to put her back on the bed she was laying on in the apartment. She started drinking again, and not even 2 weeks later went into liver failure and ended up passing away. And that was a referral through Eel Township. So.
All right. Any more questions for her? Thoughts?
What do you think?
I think it's a necessary program. I really do.
We've done this for years, right? That's my understanding.
I don't know how many we've done, we've been doing it for a while.
Yeah.
We've actually got, I put it in the budget. You know, you guys have all gotten the budget. It's in the CEDAT fund, $7,500, if you want to move forward with that.
Okay. Oh, that's fine.
the October 14th council meeting. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone. Nice
Thank
seeing
you.
your new faces.
Thank you.
Let's see. Aaron. Walnut Ridge.
So Walnut Ridge was the condominiums that had previously gone through a process to dedicate the roads, but then they're not actually, the right-of-way wasn't dedicated, and so there wasn't a legal description, so it was kind of lost in the paperwork that they were actually city roads. And so this is funding $4,200 to actually do the survey work, to come up with the legal descriptions, to create deeds, to actually have that in the city's name.
One question I had, Aaron, I noticed they put all three phases in there, and I thought one of the three already was completed. I didn't know if that made a difference.
So they were completed as dedication, but they weren't completed as legal descriptions. So it doesn't actually have its own parcel stating it's yours.
Okay.
So that it was adopted and did the dedication, but never the legal.
Believe you.
There's like 3 or 4 processes in getting it done.
That, Jacob?
That's a lot.
Okay.
Basically, this is creating the legal description that's not there for any of them right now.
So then we will legally own the street, and
Correct.
that'll come out of what they
Correct.
own. Okay. This is, like she said, the last step in this process. Everyone okay with having this surveyed, or
What was
actually,
the amount that you said?
4,200.
we could take that out. I believe we could take that out of infrastructure. We had a couple things that we were going to use that.
I left those
for,
blank because I wasn't sure where you guys would want to take it
and
from.
those things have fallen through, so we have funding there we could use for that.
Okay.
Everybody all right with moving that forward?
Sure.
All right, thank you, Aaron.
Did you get my other one? I don't know. if
What was
you have-
yours?
It was just the ordinance for the Board of Zoning Appeals you had asked because we have them.
Yeah, I'm gonna bring that forward.
The 8th?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got a couple others that'll go at the same time, but yeah, I got it. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yep.
Trail cameras, Jan. Yeah. Well, it's not actually a transfer, but Kevin sent me all the information.
Oh, and the cameras?
We have it budgeted in the,
Well, so we met here last week, week before last, on the 12th of September on the Mission MSP for their first quote on doing the cameras. And it was a quote for all cameras that we would want to do. But we decided that right now, what we need to do is pay attention to what isn't operating. And so they redid the quote for us, that so you could see what the hospital would have to pay for, and what we have to do in the Houston Park, and the Little Turtle amounts were under the $25,000 that we already have, it has been appropriated for us to do something with cameras. So we're really okay there. What I have not had a chance to talk to Tom Adams from the hospital about what they're able to do, but I suspect it'll be 2 cameras at a time, because they don't have a camera down at Davis Road or at the other end of the River Bluff Trail, because of the utilities work that's going on. So, but the idea is that using this program is probably a better program because of its, and Kevin Price is my maintenance superintendent, and he can tell you every little thing about how this works. I'm not the not the person that knows about everything, but he, what this does, the new cameras would show would not need line of sight. They become more of a network kind of thing, like a cell phone. And so we wouldn't, and so that's the direction we really need to go. So we're not worried about more trees getting up too high, or and that these would always be operational. We wouldn't have to depend on any towers or anything like that, so.
Who has access to the cameras, like the footage and?
Well, right now, the hospital is the only ones that have a way to see the cameras, what they're doing because they have the big monitor. And, but the new camera system would be such that we could watch it on, we would have the addresses to be able to watch those on our phones or on our computers or whatever. We would have those addresses. So they wouldn't rely so much on the security of the hospital not being, because that's part of it, is they don't want to give it out to just everybody because of the security of the hospital system. So very understandable. So but this also does give us 2 additional cameras at Houston Park.
In the wooded area where
so these would take in over on the east side of the park, and that's what all those trees were taken out for.
They're already
just to open
cutting
it
that
up.
back. They did
Right.
it quite a bit over the weekend or Friday or.
And so when we were at a meeting, when Kevin had his phone, like he had a camera just to try it at the dog park. And so like we're sitting in a meeting and on his phone, it's like if you have a monitor for your baby at home, he just brought it up on his phone and you could see what was going on at the dog park. And anyone that we want to have access, not us, but whoever they want to have access to the security system, they will get a login code and, you can.
And it like records and you can go back and see like what happened
Yeah, and
at
it's
this certain time.
It's not just that, but it also can identify people that you already know you need to look for this person because we know he's a person of interest.
Right.
So it will go back and look through everything and be able to show you, and it may even be able to alert you when those people are on the camera at that point, if that person's already been identified as a person of interest. So it's a lot more efficient, and we'll be able to find what we, and the guy was saying, if you want some people that are dressed in red and blue, it'll pick those people out, and you can see those people. So
So the technology on these cameras make the cameras, even though the cameras we have aren't that old, they're just, they're antiquated compared to what this new technology does. And if there's an event or something happens and the person of interest is wearing a blue sweatshirt, they can just say, a person with a blue sweatshirt, and it will bring all the cameras, will bring anything forward that will help you find that person.
Yeah.
So it's really an easy sell to do this because it's so much better than what we have. We're still using our old cameras.
Because Riverside Park is operational, a lot of Little Turtle Waterway is still operational. They're at the River Bluff Trail, in the Cold Bridge, those are still
You're saying for the
operational.
hospital is the one who has access to those?
Yes, well, they'll have to use the new system as well, like,
They'll integrate all these cameras together, even our old ones with our new ones.
Okay.
So that you'll be able to see all of this, even when we use our old ones that are line of sight, we're keeping those where they're usable, but they integrate all these cameras together.
so anyway, you don't really have to, you've already appropriated 25,000 for us to
So there's really
move
nothing.
forward on
Just
this, so
Wanted to bring them all up to
we'll just,
speed on that.
you want what?
I just wanted you to bring them up to where we were with the cameras. If you want to go ahead and, since you're sitting there, do the splash pad.
Okay, well, then, I sent Susie, Haley, and Dave the stuff that we sent to the insurance thing, but I guess first of all, we had the splash pad on Labor Day. There was a pipe it's all down in this pit, and the splash pad pipe burst overnight, and it filled up and was overflowing, and we ended up losing all of the computer system that was in that pit, which is normally dry. And we are applying for insurance on this, but I haven't heard back from the agent. The splash pad computer is actually $11,475. And I'm not sure if it's 1,000 or 5,000 that's deductible. There's different messages on that, but anyway, the pit looks like this normally, where you can, and each one of those pipes goes to one of the play features. And those are all coordinated by this computer right here, which is what we're trying to replace. And they're set up so that they only operate, you touch a button and they operate in a synced fashion. It'll be these things first, and then the buckets, and then the big spray umbrella kind of thing. And so it's a little bit at a time, and it takes about 4 or 5 minutes for it to cycle through the whole thing. And that's one of the things that this does for us. So this is the actual computer, the guts of the computer right here. And all of that was underwater for, I don't know how long. So it's not replaceable. So in order to keep that splash pad going, we're going to have this taken care of. So I'm asking for transfers as much as we can. Hopefully, like I said, I'm hoping that we'll get $1,000 or $5,000 deductible. That's all we have to pay, hopefully. So I don't know that yet, but I've given you all of this information in case we have to pay for it all, because there might be depreciation or something on it, because it is 9 years old. So the other thing is that we did, utilities did go over our budgeted amount, and so this will help us take care of that. Part of that was that water, that on Labor Day, it went, I don't know how long it went before somebody discovered it, so.
Okay with those transfers?
I have a question for you, Jan.
Yeah.
You're gonna get a new splash pad board, you're gonna replace that board, the other one's just done, correct?
Yeah, we're going to replace it all, yeah.
Are you gonna put that new board underground,
In the pit, yeah,
same pit where the other one was
Yeah.
destroyed? Can't you put that somewhere else?
I don't know the answer to that question, but we haven't had an issue with this at all, for the 10 years we've had it.
Now, it destroyed an $11,000 board.
Yeah,
Okay, why don't you get some electrician to put it up above ground? Can you do that?
because then it's exposed to vandalism and those kind of problems.
Another pit somewhere else where there's not water?
Maybe, yeah.
Will you look
But
into
that's
it?
a big cost.
Covering that you could put over it.
A waterproof covering? You don't want to buy another $11,000?
I don't know, but then you're operating, you're getting pipes and other things, because the computer goes to those pipes to coordinate everything. I mean, we can find out, what it would take to put it in its own little pit. But you got to still be able to get down into it, and so that's a concrete cost and things like that. But
I'd like to know if you can do that,
okay,
instead of putting the board right back into a potential another leak.
okay.
And all your water is metered, correct, everywhere? So is there a big bill?
Our bill is, for the year, is, right now, we're at $20,000 for the whole year. That's the pool operation as well as the splash pad. We don't separate those, so.
How much did the leak cost, do you know?
For the pool?
If it was in the pit, the broken pipe that you said was leaking since Memorial Day? Or
No, not
Labor
since
Day?
Memorial Day, no. Just, it happened on Labor Day, and it was going probably over the course of the weekend, a pipe burst
Okay.
inside that pit, so.
That escalates your bill?
In that extent, yes, it does. So,
By how much, do you know?
I don't know.
Okay.
All right, so we'll move that transfer forward. And what we got left? Guess we got Dean. Go ahead, Dean. I'm making poor Bob back there wait forever. Sorry.
Bob doesn't mind.
This is something we've actually worked on for, well, back up to the last real equipment we purchased was during COVID in 2020. And since then, we've had a lot of equipment back ordered and not able to get. So we're starting to see the equipment come in. We were actually able to take delivery on a vehicle, work vehicle, and a fairway mower earlier this year. With the whole time, our intentions, I had talked to Dave about doing a lease purchase agreement with the company and everything. It happens a lot in the golf business because one of the things is the fairway mower that we purchased in 2020 for, I think, in the mid 50s is now $72,000. So everything's escalated in price quite a bit over the last few years. So this is one of the things I talked to Dave about last week was by doing this lease purchase with our equipment, that these two pieces and a couple pieces that will come in the next few months, we have $95,000 in our budget for next year, or that we put in there for equipment. We can lower that to $45,000 to make these purchase or lease agreements and stuff like that. Save us money. They're long-lasting pieces of equipment too. They're not, they're 10-year or so pieces, so we'll get our life and use out of them. And that's it's something that I've talked about since late last winter, early spring with Dave and Dan. I even talked to Tyler, about it earlier, that this would be the way we're going. Dave indicated that the utilities does, things like this, and so.
I was looking at, so the payment structure, you want to go over that with everyone? I'm looking for it here, Dean. Oh, there we go. Tyler's got it up on the screen there.
Yeah. Yep, there you go.
So you're getting 4 pieces of equipment then?
Yeah, we have 2. This is just 2 right now. This is just the 2 right now. The Real Master 3575, which, was roughly $74,000, and then the Workman HDX, which was roughly $32,000. And then we had trade-in prices too. We had trade-in on old equipment on this. And then for these 2, we're looking at $19,000 a year for 5 years. And then on the other 2 would probably be less than that, actually, should be. The sprayer is roughly the same price as the fairway mower, and the Mini X is less than the cart, so.
And on these 2 here, you're getting ready to make the first payment on those, correct?
Well, once we, yes, that's what we're trying to do, is get this done so we can get it signed. Because actually what happened is some of this stuff was technically ordered almost 2 years ago. I mean, you can order whatever you want. You don't have to take it, but we obviously needed it at the time, or knew we were going to need it coming up. And back just right around Memorial Day, our fairway mower had a major, it's only 3 years old, but we were down about 3 weeks with it, waiting on a part. And our old fairway mower, which we were hoping to replace, actually, you need 2 decent ones, just wasn't cutting it. Just, the way it was 4,000 hours on it, and it was a wore-out thing, and Kenny Machinery got us one, basically that was supposed to be going to another golf course, but pulled some strings, got us out of a jam, big-time jam, so we could get our fairways mowed. And so this is when we took delivery on this stuff, and then we've just been kind of waiting for the trade-in values and get everything done and stuff like that to kind of finalize everything.
All right, anyone opposed to them moving this lease agreement forward? They've got the money budgeted. In fact, you had, what, 50,000, and you only need
The machinery and equipment, yeah.
19,000 this year.
Yes.
You only have to make one payment for the entire year?
Yes,
Oh, all right. And you already have it budgeted, right?
yes.
Yep. Questions for Dean? All right, thank you, Dean.
All right, thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for everything. I appreciate it, especially if you've been up here a lot lately.
Groundbreaking, Monday morning at 10 o'clock.
Okay. Come on up, Bob. We've tortured you long enough.
Good evening. Dump truck. I ordered it a year ago last June. It just came in. I've got an encumbrance for what the quote was. I don't have that amount with me. But since there's a factory year change, it went up $2,350. I don't have that in the dump truck fund, so I'm asking for a transfer from building equipment to dump truck to make up the difference of what the cost is now and the encumbrance that I have.
So you've got your truck, Bob?
Yes, it's sitting there.
Nice. Long wait, huh?
Yes, it was.
Anybody have any questions on this one? Unfortunately, like everything, the longer we wait, the more it costs.
Yes.
Okay, we'll move that forward, Bob. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
And let's see, what else did we have left? Oh, jeez. 911, I kind of summarized what the issue with 911 is. I've got a meeting with them, I believe it's this Thursday, but Dave Redwick forwarded me an email a week or two ago saying that, from Cheryl Alcorn, saying that 911 was going to be $490-some thousand in the red, and that the city had to pay half that amount. I've been trying to get a good explanation for it. One of them was that they gave their people raises, but it seems like we should have known a long time ago whether or not we were going to be this far in the hole. And the other reason I want to meet with them is, we started out, when Dave said he heard we had a shortfall, I wasn't expecting quite this much, and we put $100,000 in next year's budget, but at this rate, it doesn't look like $100,000 will fix next year's budget either. So we're gonna, I don't know who all's gonna be there. Travis and I are gonna go and meet with, I think Mike Dietrich's gonna be there, Dave Redwick. I can't tell you the name of the gal that runs 911, but she's gonna be there, and there may be a couple others, but we're gonna have a meeting to try and figure out what's going on, but basically, from the little I have received, their budget was $1,200,000 some, and their revenue was about $800,000. So we have a couple options as far as to pay this year's, like I said in the email. We can either just appropriate the money out of lit, which is where it's paid, the public safety lit, or we can just transfer the money out of the facility that was budgeted for the fire department, their training facility. They've already requested to be put in next year's budget. So it's not like they wouldn't have the money if they needed it next year. It would just be a way to transfer the money to pay our bills.
Is that the $250,000 for that training facility for the fire department?
Yeah.
Is that, and so we could just use that money and then rebudget it in
It's already,
2025?
yeah, we've got it in, he's already got it, and Jason put it in, and Rick put it in next year's budget. So, and, you know, knowing it, they weren't gonna be able to use the money this year, and there was no way to encumber it. So they just rebudgeted.
This 911 is just like dispatch when you call 911, is that what you're talking? And they were in the hole, how much?
400, I don't, let's see if I wrote the exact number down here. Well, multiply $246,675.50 times 2, and that's how much they were in the hole.
Almost $500,000, is that correct?
Just shy of $500,000, yes.
And they knew that?
I don't know when they knew it, but it seems to me if they only budgeted, if they only had 100,000 coming in and they budgeted $1.2 million, they probably had a pretty good idea they were gonna be in the hole.
And they gave
The
raises
question is-
knowing that?
Pardon?
They gave raises to their employees knowing that?
I haven't had the meeting yet, Scott.
Isn't that what you just said, though? They had
That was they gave raises, big raises in '23, he said. So they should have known going into '24's budget, they were gonna be short. But I don't have all the details yet. When I get them, I'll let you guys know what those are, but we
Is
just
your
need to
meeting Wednesday?
anticipate having a bigger payment than the $60,000 we budgeted.
Well, who does their books that they don't know that tell you that they're $500,000 behind?
I haven't been to the meeting yet.
Details we'd like to have.
What day's the meeting?
Thursday. It's,
We'd like to
Well,
hear
I
the
think that-
details, Dave.
Yeah, and I know it's a.
Well, I've already told Mike Dietrich and Dave Redwood both that it's ridiculous that they wait till the end of the year to tell us we owe them 240-some thousand, when last year it was under 60.
Exactly.
Well, and you have somebody here asking you for $7,500 that they don't give a penny to. You might want to mention that.
Very good.
I'll put it on my list.
You're gonna sell too, because that was another one you guys forgot.
I'm not saying I'll bring it up. But anyway, so that's the situation there. I want everybody to be aware of it, because we'll have to make that transfer before the end of the year to pay that.
So we're paying the two something and the county's picking up the other part to equal
They're
four?
paying half and we're
Okay.
paying half of the shortfall.
And this is this can be prevented from happening again? I mean, if they still go under, they still gonna be giving
Well,
raises out?
I guess what I'd say, Scott, is from when I talked to Dave Redwick, he didn't seem much happier than I did with the numbers they gave him.
That's good.
Because they're in the same boat as us, they gotta figure out where it's coming from now. But
Well, I think it's
they have board
important to
meetings, I don't know
find
if it was ever discussed in the board meetings, that's one of the questions I have for them.
Okay.
Seems like at some point you might discuss finances.
Yeah, if the person doing their books got a raise, that'd be fabulous.
I'll write that down too. Jacob, last thing on the agenda, do you want to say anything about Trelleborg?
Yeah, actually. And I think it would probably benefit us to have another meeting, as you know, Dave, when I first reached out to set this up when you got back, things were a little different than last week.
Mhm.
We got a lot of information on the letter from the attorney, and then as well as some additional information from BCA on what we really need to close out the Okra project there. And so overall, there's a decent amount of cost associated with the removal of the slab that we've done. So we did the Okra grant, we broke up the slab, and then did some testing, found out that pieces of the slab were at a higher concentration of contamination, and so that concrete couldn't be like crushed up and reused on the site under a parking lot or something like that. And so then we've been going through, getting an agreement with Waste Management for them to be willing to accept this specific waste at whatever amount that it ends up being. We got them to agree to take 8,500 tons. That's not what we're going to need to do. And we just, about 5 o'clock today, BCA sent me over their final estimates of what we need to close out the Okra project, get the contaminated material off that site into the landfill, and be done with it. And the rest of the concrete there, actually, we got permission to reuse on the Exide site as we go forward with that remediation project over the course of the next several months. And so anything that doesn't have to go to the landfill, we'll be able to go over there, be crushed up, kept, be covered in plastic, all that kind of stuff. They can go through more of those details with you guys, but it's gonna save us a lot of money on disposal costs, because now we have a use for that concrete, as well as we go forward on the Exide site, there's actually a big elevation change on that piece of property. And when they go through and do the remediation, they're probably gonna have to take off a couple of feet of topsoil and some of these other things. And so the idea is that we could basically make it a wash and use all of the remaining concrete from the Trelleborg site and the Exide site as fill to bring up the grade of that property to allow it to be buildable as is and save us a lot of money. So I don't want to make an ask of you guys today. I think I would rather set this for another meeting, have the BCA folks either call in or come here and talk to you about the details of it. But really, we're looking at 40 to 50,000 to put towards the Okra project, be able to close that out, and then it'll be ready for redevelopment whenever that comes. It's still in the tax credit application process for the actual housing there, but this will get us to the point where we're able to sign off, Okra's done with, we got that done, and then if the tax credits come through, they can go forward and do the project, and we don't have to worry about any of the remaining stuff there. And if they don't come through, then we have a much more marketable piece of property that will have, hopefully all of its item closures and get that going.
So when does the Okra?
So right now we have an extension from Okra. So originally our hope was to have that piece of the project done in August, but with the EPA and waste management difficulties on coming to an agreement on how the material was going to be regulated by the EPA when waste management got it.
You're talking about 12?
Yes. Is that what you're asking about?
Yeah. Well, I guess I'm confused just in the respect that, when we had all the discussions about the housing and all that, none of this was ever brought up about the deadline with Okra and the fact that we needed to close out that grant.
Well, that's always been part of it. We need to close out the grant. Now, we have a lot of time. They'll give us several extensions. We got the first extension. Now, the contractors, now that we've gotten the APA issues figured out with waste management, the contractors are ready to mobilize again in November. And so ideally, we would come forward, get some type of appropriation to finish that out. And as part of this discussion with the letter from Ginny, that would be how we go forward and as part of what we hope to recover. But initially, we thought that we were going to have to deal with maybe the entire amount or a much larger amount of the concrete than we see now. Now that number has dropped dramatically, and I think it would benefit us to get that done, get the Okra part done, finished out, and then go forward on the actual closure of the site with IDEM and the insurer here and figure out what makes sense for them to give to the city to officially close out the site. So that was always part of it, the disposal of the concrete.
Well, I knew that the concrete had to go, but I was not aware that the Okra grant was being held open because the concrete was sitting there. I mean, it was never brought up in any of our discussions with the housing part, because when we asked, well, what is it going to take to clean that up, they were talking like, well, we'll come in and clean it up for you guys.
No. So what they were saying was that the project being completed would be the end of the remediation. So the thought at the time was that if we could get that done and get as much of the thought at the time was that we could reuse a lot of the concrete on that site, potentially. And that's still a possibility, but BCA knows now that all of it could be reused at Exide. And so that now we don't need to necessarily wait for their part of it, other than this.
So you're just gonna haul it over to Exide?
Yes.
You're not gonna take any to Waste Management?
There's gonna be some level of tonnage, I don't have that number, but that's where the $40,000 estimate came from, that's what we need to take to Waste Management, essentially. That would be the hauling and the disposal.
Where does that money come from, the $40,000?
Well, that would be the question for you guys. I think that it would make sense as a seated expense, but, you know, if there's, I know that.
Now, you said something about BCA is gonna line up people to haul it away?
So our contractor that we had to rubblize the concrete and all of that was already had within their budget to haul it somewhere. And the thought was initially that we would be able to utilize it all. So they were already planning to move it off of site somewhere if we had projects going on that we could utilize it for, like road projects or you know, had we gotten it done early enough to do the parking lot down at Riverside or something like that. Like those types of projects we could use it for, so that was built into the original budget. What wasn't built into the budget was this section of the concrete that tested higher for the greater than 1 part per million or
One
whatever.
that has to go to Waste Management?
That's what has to go to Waste Management, yes. So it was always built in to do that, but we thought that depending on the timing of the housing project, we could reuse some of it on the site, and that was what we were holding out for. But with this new discovery of what they're going to have to do as they just finished up their remediation plan for Exide, which helped them discover that, oh, they need to bring in all of this fill anyway, and we have it right next door, and we're looking for a way to get rid of it. So it just kind of worked out that way.
On a side note, is the plan with Fort Trelleborg, I mean, the people that are working out of there right now on the houses and stuff, they're planning, it sounds like they're planning on coming back again this spring.
So you mean Exide? Are you, the EPA
doing EPA, that they're using Exide
They're using
site?
yes.
Are they going to be able to continue to use that next spring and until they're completely done with the
Yep,
housing part of that?
We're going to have to make sure that their stuff is staged in the right place, but I don't think for their current mobilization, I don't think it would be any type of problem. We had a call with BCA this morning, and they are looking at getting bid specs to the utilities this month to go forward with the Exide remediation, and their estimate for timeline for getting that work started would be around the first of the year. So the EPA is going to be able to do all the stuff that they need to do, at least this year.
So they have been hired by you guys to be like the contractor for that?
So BCA is not the contractor. They are the engineers and environmental consultants on it, but they are developing the bid specs for, actually, since all of this is run through the utilities bond, for the utilities to send out later this month, and we'll just do a normal bid process. But they will then manage that contractor. So it'll be two separate entities, but they will kind of have the oversight on behalf of us. So it's all getting going, all at the same time.
All right, any questions?
Say that 40,000 was for the cleanup for that one section of the concrete?
That is for the concrete that absolutely must go to the landfill.
And that's estimated 40,000?
That's the estimate they gave me a couple of hours ago.
Where did you want to pay that out of?
Once again, for lack of a better option, I think it's a good seeded thing. I think that the project that would come, whether it's the one that we've already talked about or whether it helps us finalize the, potential for redevelopment of this property, I think it's a good option, and I think there are some things in there that we might be able to say, that are not going to go this year, as we've talked about some of the other options, with the 911 on pulling from the fire training things. I think there are some budgeted things that we might be able to pull from that may not happen this year to not make it an additional appropriation. But, you know, I would like to get a not to exceed at the October meeting so that we can get the contractor going, finish that out. But I do think that there are some options for not having to spend all of that money. We have 10 to 15,000 planned as essentially contingency within the grant. And so the thought is that if nothing else comes up, that could easily be used as part of what they need for this piece of the disposal. But that, I want to have confidence from the contractor that we can go forward and get it done. And on the back end, I think that there are some options, like they talked about the other day with, you know, working with Waste Management to see about, you know, some different options as far as payment and how that thing's structured. They pay us however much money every month, you know, would there be a potential for a deal to, you know, do it that way and not have to just shell out?
CEDA fund is for businesses, to retain businesses and bring in new business. How do you rate that for disposal of contaminated waste?
Because the disposal of the contaminated waste allows for the redevelopment of a 13-acre piece of property on the northwest side of town that, you know, that area of the community feels, you know, neglected sometimes, I think.
What business related?
It would be it's the housing development that we've talked about already. So it's
how do you rate that into CEDA as a business?
I think it's a business. It's commercial real estate. So that's what it would be, is that it would bring in commercial housing, allow for, you know, an increase in the workforce, allow for companies that come in to know that if they need new employees, those people have a place to live. Because right now we haven't had significant multifamily development, and I don't know how long. And that's one of the things when you're trying to recruit these businesses, that they're looking for you to be building housing alongside of it. I think that's part of our opportunity as the region grows, as the things happen in Kokomo and Lafayette, to allow more people to live here that work in other places, but also to continue our momentum, have new housing built, like Lexington Village, like some of the smaller developments, but to have a significant multifamily development that shows that we have the capacity to grow as a community and get some of these new employers that you're wanting. So I think it goes hand in hand. I think it's a perfect CEDA match, to be honest with you. It turns a blighted piece of property that gets absolutely no tax revenue on right now into something productive where, you know, a couple hundred people could be living, as well as now the property is going to be valued at $30+ million. I mean, that's the investments that we're talking about there.
And this is where you see you're going for employers to come in knowing that they have places for their employees to live, correct?
That's one piece of it, yes, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's an important piece of it. I think it's hard to go out and recruit a new business, and I, you know, can't speak to it 100%, but I think it would be very difficult without showing that we have the capacity to take in growth. I've met with, you know, certain developers that look to see how much has been built over the last couple of years to see, you know, if they're going to be interested. Sometimes they follow these other people, so I think this development too will spur some other ones and will show that, you know, we can get projects like this done.
I hope so.
Yeah, I agree.
I have my doubts. I'd like to see it, but I believe it when I see it.
I know you do, Scott, but I'm telling you, whether it's these people or not, it's going to be a 13-acre piece of property that was unusable for anything other than, you know, maybe solar, maybe storage units, to something that could be a really significant development for that neighborhood and the community as a whole. So, but I want to set up another meeting to allow BCA to come in, give you guys some more information on it, but I do want you to know that I'd like to do this at the October meeting if at all possible, so that we can, if everybody's in agreement that we want to get this done, give the contractor confidence to go down there and get it all done in November. Be ready to go at the end of the year.
All right, thank you, Jacob.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Couple notes to close things out here. I don't know if everyone, I know we've talked about this in past meetings, but I wanted to let everybody know that the first of the month, we had sent out RFPs to different banks for our surplus money that's basically our backup money, that is kind of the suggested buffer that you need according to Baker Tilly and whatnot, in case something would happen. We invested $6.5 million. We invested it in 5 different terms at 3 different banks. We invested in a 3-month CD at Horizon Bank for $1.3 million. We invested 6 months and 18 months at Harris Bank. I think they have their closest location is Kokomo. And then we got a 21 and a 24-month CD for the same amounts at Merchants Bank, and they are in Peru, Carmel, Indy, they're all over the general area. I wanted to let people know that we sent these to every bank in Logansport. We had a couple banks that I think Bill's talked to that basically just weren't in a position to take on the extra money. Is that the right way to say that right now, Bill?
They call it liquidity, they don't always need money, so they don't want to, they don't need it, they don't want to pay for it.
But they were appreciative of the fact that we've sent them this information and
They actually like the system because they have an opportunity every few months, even if they don't.
So I just wanted to let everybody know where their money went. So it's in 3 different banks. We've got 5 different terms, and they'll be rolling over every so often. Here's a letter the mayor handed me. I'll just read it to you guys. City of Logansport, my husband and I, sometimes along with other family members and friends, travel through Logansport on our way to visit our daughter and her family in South Bend. We go there 2-3 times a month. We live in Danville, Illinois. Follow GPS. The route through Logansport is my favorite. Your town looks so inviting. We love the petunias hanging by the bridges and in pots throughout the town. They look so nice. We have seen the Christmas decorations during that season. Nice. Once we stopped and ate at a restaurant located near the river. Food was good and the service was excellent. Waitress, this was probably my wife, I would imagine, was very friendly and sweet. If we were ever to have to relocate, Logansport would definitely be a town we would investigate. I just wanted to let you know that your efforts are noticed and appreciated. Gene Wheeler from Danville, Illinois. Very nice. And then on a wonderful note, since everybody's more than ready to go home, we're going to have a finance committee meeting next Monday at 4 p.m. to go through all the department budgets and set the final budget for the October 14th meeting.
What time just then?
4 o'clock.
4.
I've got the roster made,
You got the roster up?
and
Okay.
Mindy's going to put it out for everybody tomorrow. And with that, unless somebody else has something, we'll close.
Dave, what's the date on that, next meeting?
Monday.
Next
what?
Monday, October 7th, Scott.
October 7th?
Yes.
Thank you. 6 p.m.?
4 p.m.
4 p.m.
Okay. Bill, you're first up on the roster that night. Didn't you say you got school board that night?
5 o'clock.
Okay, so
Hopefully it's turned out on my part.
you're first up that day. All right. With that, we'll adjourn.